Hello, beautiful souls. I hope you're doing well. Today, it's my great joy and pleasure to share with you a creative intuitive transmission, a CIT. It's been a couple of weeks we have not done any CIT, so it's a pleasure to have one today. But before I go into the more in depth into this session, I would just like to make a short announcement. I have created and offered a service on my website, abigaëllerichard.com, and you can see this service offered at the page of my art shop, but also on my page Harmonia. And this service, which is I find is really fun, is to propose to you an opportunity to order a handmade original collage just for you, just for your sacred space, may it be your living space, your meditation room, or your workspace, whatever. And the way it works is that you contact me through the form that's on my web pages, and we convene for a Zoom meeting. And on that Zoom meeting, we'll have the opportunity to discuss what are your tastes, what is your space. You can present me a little bit the room or space in which you want to put this artwork, and I will actually create a Japanese washi chiyogami paper collage, an original one, a unique one, just for you, with your own tastes, with your own preference in terms of colors, in terms of shapes and motifs. And I have to say, it will be a little bit intuitively inspired by your frequency, your vibration. Although I want to make it clear, it's not a creative intuitive transmission like I'm doing here or how I used to do in the past on a one-on-one. It's not that. I'm not there to give you intuitive guidance. It's really about creating a collage for you, but obviously it will be intuitively inspired by your energies, but also the energies of your space. So, and then I'll create the collage and I will send it to you. And as always, the collage, the price of this service will include not only the 1 hour Zoom we'll have together, the opportunity to exchange, the price of the artwork, because as you know, these collages are made of high quality, premium quality chiyogami Japanese paper, and also a watercolor paper. And this will also include the shipping and handling and taxes, and shipping and handling anywhere in the world. And it also includes a handmade bookmark and card on which I will share some loving, high frequential words for you. So all of this is included. It's a wonderful offer. And so I just wanted to let you know that this service exists now, if that's something that speaks to your heart, because when you go through my art shop, you probably see a lot of collages, and there's a big variety of them, either in the original form or in the digital file form. However, sometimes, we all have our preferences and we like a particular color or particular motif. So it's your opportunity to have the perfectly unique handmade collage just for you in your space. So just wanted to share this element today of my services. Now, let's go back to our creative intuitive transmission. So today's topic is out of servitude. Like, it's a really, it's a big one-liner there, out of servitude. So the Mella Collective, which is my soul cluster with whom I communicate on the heart level, telepathic level, it's not channeling. They share their, in a way, their insights and guidance, but also invite me always to share my own personal experiences on my spiritual and inner journey, because it speaks from experience about what I'm going through, and it puts me in the place where I can be authentic with you guys and sometimes even vulnerable and share these things, because we're all going through struggles. I'm no better than anyone. And so it gives me an opportunity to be real and authentic with you, with what I'm going through. And perhaps the point is not to talk about myself, but really to be about inspiring you, if the message resonates with you, with something you're going through as well, it will help you find in some way an opportunity to think differently or get another perspective, or through as well the Mella Collective, which I'm part of, bring in terms of guidance. So why did they want to talk about um, coming out of servitude? So coming out of servitude is something that can be seen on on different kind of levels. Obviously, there's the more general level where, as human Terrans, we are invited to come out of servitude and submission from, the kind of matrix in which we have been living in, from the deep state. That, again, it's not about being victims. It's about acknowledging that this was there to create a form of contrast for us to realize, to give go through the experience of being submitted and in servitude in order to decide not to be anymore. And so this contrast was necessary for us to take back our sovereignty and our freedom. So in a way, there was a purpose for all of this. So we can see it that way, in the sense that we are invited to not accept or follow that program that was imposed on us on all kinds of level, governmental level, religious level, spiritual level, because, even the New Age has been a little bit kind of a program that's been infiltrated as well to, impose certain, beliefs in us sometimes. And so all of this is something we're invited to come out of and just think for ourselves and go within us and discover who we really are and what we really want to do, each of us as unique individuals. So it can be seen on that level. But for today's message, I think that it was more aimed at on an individual level, how some of us sometimes have lived. And, I will take the example of starseeds, which often had very challenging childhoods or life situations, because it was an opportunity for them to live the contrast. For example, I'll give a very specific example. Many starseeds have been often the psychological parent of their own parents, who often either were irresponsible or were not mature enough to have had children and were struggling with that. And often the starseed child would end up being more of a psychological parent for their own parent than a real playful child who had that opportunity to be all that he was. So that's just an example. But I mean, there's many ways in which each of us might have fallen into a pattern of servitude. And obviously things like religion, like, for example, the Judeo-Christian kind of faith or beliefs, have really imprinted in many of us this notion of guilt and, you don't deserve things, and thus have put us in a place of mental and psychological submission, but servitude sometimes, in the sense that because we're like, incarnations of the original sins and all that BS. And I'm saying this with respect, but I'm tired of these notions that have hurt us so much, that what happens is that because you feel so much guilt from being raised as a sinful being, you end up thinking that you need to kind of there's a word in atone yourself or something like that. I don't know what's the exact word in English, but that you have to kind of save yourself from that original sin by becoming at the service, serve others and serve this and serve that, and then it becomes very heavy, and then you're stuck with that serving role, and you end up being not only submitted, but in this kind of a posture of servitude. And many of us in many lifetimes have also experienced situations of submission or servitudes. For example, slavery situations, which have happened in many societies, either in antiquity, but also obviously with the African slaves, during the colonies, and but there's not just that. There's also the position of servitude that many people have had for thousands of years regarding states, regarding a lord or a castle, and they were just like a serf. They would just there to work the land and serve the Lord, and the kind of the elite there, and pay taxes and just be at the service. And there was also the domesticity aspect of it, when we were maids or servants or domestics. And there's been a lot of that in our previous lives, where we have experienced this contrast of being in submission and servitude. And many of us have been ingrained with this kind of posture and have a hard time coming out of it. And so we end up repeating in our lives today some patterns of submission and servitude, and it can take different form. It can be real, like servitude, in the sense that you're working like a crazy person, almost like slave-like, for a boss or for a company or for an individual. Or you end up putting yourself in a posture of extreme servitude, where you're always serving others while you're not respecting your own needs or your own sovereignty and freedom, and you just put yourself at the service of others, in the sense that so much that you lose who you are, and you're not serving first of all, your own needs in order to be able to give to others. So there's all kinds of ways in which you can adopt the posture of servitude. And I want to share, as Mella Collective suggested, a personal experience where just a few days ago, I had the opportunity in a vision to see a past life of mine, or parallel lives, as we should call them, where I was a maid, a servant, a female, and I was just laying on the floor, like with, on my knees and on my hands, and washing the floor, by hand, and struggling. And then the whole purpose of the vision was to actually, for me to transmute and transcend, because this was my intention when the vision had started, was for me to understand why I was always in a place where I would end up being in a kind of a submissive and kind of a servitude kind of posture towards other people's needs. It started with, my relationship with my family, but also that I've recreated in my life here, even in my activity here. Sometimes I ended up giving everything to people without respecting my own self, my own time. And this is something I've shared with you guys in a previous video, where I was saying, please, I ask you to respect a little bit more my time, because people were just taking from me all the time and not giving back. And I realized that I had put myself in that posture of servitude, because we're always responsible for what happens in our lives. We're not victims. So if this pattern was happening in my life again and again and again, it's because I was making it possible. So I realized that that was the reason why I was always in a situation where I was giving to people, but I was rarely receiving in return. And that took the same thing happened regarding money. I was in a psychological posture where it was all about, oh, I can't ask for money, and oh, I'll do this on a donation basis, almost like I'm giving you things for free. It's like always that posture of not deserving. And that was something I was really tired of, because I was struggling financially and it was difficult. And, I was always in that posture of not having enough and giving, but never receiving. So I thought, okay, how can I transmute this posture? This doesn't work for me anymore. So this is how I got this vision of this maid, on the floor, scraping the floor and washing the floor and being submitted and in servitude. And yes, yes, sir. Yes, yes, ma'am. And then I realized that I didn't need that BS anymore in my life. I was ingrained with that past life or parallel life that put me in a posture I didn't want to be into anymore. So through that beautiful vision, I had the opportunity to talk to that maid, and she got up on her standing up, and she just took her little maid hat off, and she said, I could feel she was suddenly realizing that she didn't need to be in this submissive and position of servitude. And that was an extremely liberating moment for me, because it's like something energetically happened where I cut something that was like, I don't need this BS anymore. I deserve to have time for myself and give also to people, but I don't have to be at the service of others, in the sense that doesn't mean I become like service to self and I'm just like completely egoistic, but it doesn't mean that I have to be at the service of anyone. I can just be myself in sovereignty. And when energy permits, when time permits, then I'm happy to be present and helpful or supportive to others, but I'm not at their service. You know what I mean? So it's a shift in paradigm for me. It was an important one, and I think that also will definitely have at some point a transformative aspect, a transformative role in my relationship to financial abundance and the way I give and receive and things like that. So I thought that was a really crucial moment for me because it changed a lot of things. So I wanted to share that with you because, again, not to talk about me, but to tell you that, if that might resonate for you, because many of you have perhaps been in a situation of either psychological or physical submission or servitude that you need to kind of move out of because you don't need it anymore. We're going through a transformation on Terra where, vibrations are getting higher and we don't need to be in this position anymore, So that's something I needed or wanted to share with you guys. And this is the reason as well, while you'll see that on my website, instead of doing things on a donation basis, I finally decided to put a fixed amount for my services, which I think is reasonable because, either the materials are expensive or either because my time is something I need to respect, my time and energy. And, I think it's kind of balanced for people's as an exchange of energy. So everything has to be now about an exchange of energy and not just at the service, submissive servitude, to others because, whatever you need their validation or whatever. So that's my journey. It doesn't have to be everybody's journey, but this is my journey. So I wanted to share that with you. So this coming out of servitude, as I was doing as well a meditation this morning regarding the CIT, I also had the inner child in me come to me and say, it's not just about coming out of servitude, it's also about the leaping child. I had that phrase coming, the leaping child. And it had to do with a posture where you're not only moving out of servitude and submission, but you're actually consciously putting yourself in a posture of reconnecting with a happy, joyful child. Because what happens is that, again, like I've said, many of us, as either as starseeds or not, as children, we have opted for a position of being the parents of our parent psychologically, and we tried all the time to be responsible and do the right thing, be the good girl, the good boy, and be like at the service of our parents in a way, and psychologically, and sometimes for some people it was physically, but that's another story. But and we're invited to come out of that posture as a child and reconnect with that inner child and let him or her play, be the child they need to be the joyful child. And if you're not caught up in the posture of submission and servitude, you actually start being sovereign and free again, and you know what you want, you know what it is you are, you can center back in. And this notion of going back within us, going back within, doing that inner journey of healing of that posture of submission, but also to reconnect with what we really are and what we really want, instead of just being at the service of others all the time until exhaustions and breakdowns kick in, So there's this notion of connecting within and being always centered, but also while doing this and getting out of the posture of submission, the inner child can finally adopt its natural posture of playfulness, of joy, of just being the child it should be, and be happy and be joyful and play and give itself the right moments to be playful and joyful. That doesn't mean you become irresponsible and you don't, no, at all. It's just finding that balance between, being responsible to the point where you lose yourself and finding that inner joy, that inner child that needs to live and not be submitted by any kind of form. So this complementary element of connecting to the joyful leaping inner child is an important element that Mella Collective would also wanting to put into the perspective and that is brought today. So let's have a look at the iconography or symbolism of representation we see in today's CIT. So first of all, the Mella Collective has invited us to use this background. And I wish to give a precision because I had some people connecting with me saying, oh, your beautiful backgrounds, you draw so well, whatever. I just wanted to say that I'm not drawing or painting these backgrounds. Those backgrounds are actually free of right, sometimes AI created, but not always, free of right designs or paintings or drawings that I take on the internet in free of right platforms. So just wanted to share that with you. I'm not a painter. I do create drawings, ink drawings, but they're usually made of represent like abstract motifs. So I'm not doing any illustrative art. So what we have here is quite a beautiful, very inspiring design because first of all, we have these birds that are in flight that we'll find also in our beautiful collage that we've made that we'll be talking in a minute, which for me represent this sense of freedom, of sovereignty and liberty to finally, extract yourself from a posture of submission. There is the fact that there is a kind of bird's view eye of a landscape gives again this impression of being, seeing things from a different perspective from up there and just not being submitted to the floor, but just seeing things from up there and having a broader perspective, more free and sovereign perspective on things. And then we have this beautiful lady who's kind of riding a beautiful cat. I don't know if it's a lynx or what kind of wild cat that is. I'm sorry if I don't know my animals so well. But she is riding that beautiful cat and she's surrounded by these beautiful purple-like colors and at the same time yellow golden colors, which really speak of the purple color for me really represents this notion of appeasement, of plenitude, while the yellow gold really reminds me of the leaping, joyful child who's full of energy. And there's also that notion of source energy that's very high vibe and joyful. And how do I interpret this young woman kind of, flying over the world, riding this beautiful cat? As we know, cats can be very independent creatures. I mean, you don't force a cat to do anything they don't want to. Cats, if any of you have domestic cats, you know that cats are very independent. You don't force them into anything. So I think that this is what it represents, this notion of freedom, sovereignty, and non-servitude and non-submission that's really represented by the cat figure who's like just doing what it wants. It's extremely benevolent being. It offers to re-equilibrate and harmonize energies in your lives. And those who have cats know that. And it will do that for you unconsciously and you don't know it, but they will do that for you. But that doesn't mean that they are at the service of you, They're doing their own thing. They eat what they want, they sleep what they want, they do what they want. But still, they bring things to you. They support you energetically, but they're not at your service. And in this way, they're not maids, they're not servant. So they bring us a beautiful, inspiring message, by being who they are, and it can inspire us to also follow that kind of wisdom of helping, supporting others, but not being at their service. And then, so this lady is riding that beautiful cat, meaning that she's really following that injunction or that invitation to become sovereign and free and not submitted. And she's, she has this beautiful candle on her head, which for me represents a little bit like, I don't know, the wisdom of the pineal gland, where, there's this openness and this understanding on the psychological, but also soul level that you don't need anymore to be a submitted servant in all kinds of senses, like it's just an image, but you can come out of that posture of submission and servitude. And behind her, there's all kinds of flowers and a beautiful butterfly. There's a little fairy there as well, which for me really represent not only the beautiful powerful element of nature, but of freedom and of the joyful child that is allowed not to be the responsible adult that's kind of submitted to rules and things, but that can be a little bit of a dreamer and accept to go into his or her inner world where it's magical in a beautiful way, and where the child is allowed to be all that he or she is and bloom, and just be free and joyful and playful. So this is how I interpret this beautiful background. Now, let's go to our Japanese washi chiyogami collage that I've created for you today. And I'm going to move a little bit so this way you can see it better here. So this collage is entitled Aralea. So Aralea is spelled here, Aralea. So Aralea is very complementary to the background we have today, because it has also a very kind of busy, joyful, liberating kind of vibe, which takes the colors, the gold and the purple that are really present in the background as well. And for me, like I've said, has some sort of meaning, which I will get back to in a second. So Aralea has a background of purple paper, which has these lovely white birds in flight, and they're all opening their wings, which for me really represent this liberating freedom out of the posture of servitude and submission to find your own sovereignty and freedom. So they're all, taking flight. And the fact that all the birds are going into the same direction doesn't represent for me the programmed aspect of things, but more the fact that there's a coherence in the way we open our wings. There's a coherent kind of movement towards freedom and sovereignty within ourselves, but in general in our society on the Terran level, where we all take our flight and open our wings in that way. So there's also a lot of golden elements in that background paper, which for me always represents the frequency of source, and so as well as the fractal of source that we are, and that we're all connected when we are going within and reconnecting with whom we really are and with our real needs, and not at the service of everybody else. Then we're connected to the fractal of source that we are, and we're connected to source as well. So hence the beautiful golden elements in that background. Then we have a large central circle, which really represents a central idea. And in this case, again, a golden circle with a lot of white birds in flight again, which, same as the background, really represent this notion of taking flight, finding sovereignty. And the golden element represent as well the connection of the fractal of source that we all are within, but also to source. But there's a joyfulness to that central circle. It's gold, and there's these beautiful red fruits and birds in flight and purple flowers, and it's a kind of grounded, because there's a lot of nature elements. A lot of, for me, represents like kind of the grounded to Terra element of joy, of happiness, and the connection to that inner child that's really leaping and joyful in everyday life. So meaning that your inner child cannot just be happy in your head or out upstairs. It's really about how your inner child can be happy in the everyday things, in the everyday gestures and action of your life. When you do the dishes, when you dance in your living room because you hear a beautiful piece of music, when you laugh, when you go out in nature and see, inner earth beings, and, you just relish at the beauty of life and the way you, in presence, you really enjoy your meal or a moment you have in the company of someone, things like that. Then, in the lower part of this collage, we have a purple circle with golden waves. And for me, the waves, as I've often said, represent the notion of kind of challenges. So in that case, it represents, in a way, the thing that has weighted us down for many, many lives sometimes, which is this element of servitude or submission, which can be related to the waves, the chaos, not the chaos, but the challenges, let's say, more of the servitude and the submission that weights you down. And oh my God, it's so heavy, So it's something that's beyond, that's lower, it's behind you. It's not governing your life anymore, but it's still part of your life journey. So you learned a lot from that. And in a way, the reason why the waves are golden is that because there's a beautiful gift of wisdom and contrast in those challenges that have brought you an opportunity to say nevermore. I don't want to be a maid anymore. I don't want to be a servant. I don't want to be in servitude. I don't want to be in submission in my life anymore as a human Terran or as a person. And so that experience is still part of the jewel of, that you are, which is represented here by these shapes in the central part of the collage. But it's also like it's part of, who you were, and it's part of who you are. And you need to integrate and harmonize all parts of yourself. That doesn't mean you need to be submitted anymore and to be subservient to anything anymore. But it's just there to remind you of that nevermore. You've learned from that experience. It made you wiser. You know what you want now. You want to be sovereign and free, but it's there to remind you of that. So the central kind of golden circle that makes a bridge between the large golden circle and that purple one has the flower of life motif, which for me always connects us to the fractal of source that we are and to the energy of source, and is a way to tell us that these challenges have been a gift for us to remember that we're not, victims of this anymore, that we have integrated the message and the lesson, the karmic lesson, and that we're ready now to move on to something else. And then in the central circle of the larger one, the golden one, we have a red central circle, which is for me always represents the connection to the heart. This red circle is always a connection to the energetical heart, the chakra, but also our physical heart. And this is always where you will be able to not only know who you are when you go within, you do that inner journey, you go within, you know who you are through that heart, through that connection of the heart that connects you to yourself and to your inner guidance and source, and the fractal of source that you are as a soul. But it's also the place where you can meet your inner child that needs to be liberated and be finally leaping and joyful. So there's this element there. This is kind of the place where all of this meet. And then finally from there, from that place of knowledge and inner connection to soul, comes these blooming branches, which for me, it's interesting because sometimes I put these branches in that kind of, sorry, I can't see, I don't know if you can see really well. I put it in that posture, which is like a bloom. It's like branches blooming out of the center towards the exterior. But this time I've represented them more like in that form, which for me represent, yes, a blooming towards the exterior, but still keeping a blooming from inside. So it's a blooming inside. It's not just putting everything outside of you. It's really about getting within, going within, and blooming from the inside. And this beautiful paper used for these branches, again, is the golden with flower of life motif, which for me represent the connection to source and the fractal of source that we are. So meaning going back within to reconnect with that source within us. And in that way, we can never be in servitude and in submission again. And we can be the leaping, joyful child. So I hope this collage has resonated with you as well as the message of today. The collage, as well as a digital file of this collage, is available on my online boutique at abigaëllerichard.com. Both the original collage and the digital file are imbued with the beautiful high vibrations of today's message and the colors and the energy of the Mella collective, which I often associate with purple and gold. So it's interesting. So I hope, if that's something that speaks to your heart, you can bring it to your own sacred space. So that's it for today. I hope this message today has inspired you and offered you an opportunity to come out of if it's a posture you have adopted in the past or in the present, come out of this servitude posture, which doesn't serve anybody. Because even if you think that you are the service of others, and that gives you, like, your ego thinks, oh, I'm such a good person, like in the kind of Judeo-Christian, even new age thing, thinking that, oh, because I'm at the service of others, then I'm a good person, then I'm worth being loved, and all that BS. when you're perfectly aligned with you, with your own needs, and you give yourself first what you need to be filled up, then you will just naturally offer to others. And you're not going to be at service. You're just going to offer kindly, in harmony, in equilibrium, and everybody will be happy. And you don't need to serve anyone. So, sending you lots of love. Take great care of yourself and high vibrations towards you. Bye.